Welcome to Resilient Science, a show where we spend 10 to 15 to 20 to 25 minutes each week trying to better understand a topic around hockey, rehab, and the science behind it. I'm Dr. Ben Cernick. I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I'm a strength coach, I'm a goalie coach, and I'm a graduate student researching how we can do better at practice in hockey. As always, I'm here with nine-time pro goalie, Jamie Phillips.
Hello, I am Jamie Phillips. I am a former professional goalie, current doctor of physical therapy student, getting a lot closer to being done my didactic work. I am at home in Canada in my childhood bedroom, and it looks exactly like I left it when I was 16 years old and moved away to play junior. You can see Hendrik. If you're watching on
Yeah.
YouTube, you'll see Lundqvist rocking some really sweet TPS pads. Uh,
Yeah. Wow. That is
Note
so many.
before we move on, the Lake State's goalie, because Tech played Lake State last night. Sam Isley. I always thought it was something different. That was Easel, but it's Isley. But anyways, he has CCM pads, but he did the old TPS Lundqvist design on it.
Nice.
They you know what? I hate to say anything good about another team's goalie. They are very nice pads.
Are they really cool?
Very oh oh yes.
Are
Worth
they?
like go if you're
I'll look it
listening.
up. I'll look it up.
Yeah, go look it up and give him a high five on that because they're very well done. Very well done.
Counter question before we actually talk about stuff today. Are they nicer than Vazzy's Vapor Bowers, which like I had those Bauer Vapors as a 12-year-old, and like they were some of the best and worst pads I've ever worn. Um,
Um,
so
I wonder if we could find a pair of those Vapor 30s kicking around. Are they Vapor 30s or are they Bauer Vapor?
no, the Vapor, like the ones that had like the air pockets
Yeah,
on the side,
I
yeah, they're
wonder if we
Vapor
could
30s.
find some of those in like a secondhand shop. Anyways, no, the Vassies are. Well, I say Vassies like we're friends.
Close personal
Very
friend.
yeah, those are really nice. One thing, like I know CCM does the digital print. Um, I do think Bauer is still better in terms of those little details, and like those show depth. And I think that is really cool because it looks like those air pockets are actually full of air.
Welcome to Resilient Hockey Design.
Resilient UX graphic design.
All right, Jamie. We were actually going to do something productive today. Shift
Yes.
gears. We've talked a lot about really on ice specific things for the past little couple weeks. So we're going to shift things to off ice as we approach a little holiday break. People might be a little bit, getting through these last few weeks as we approach maybe some time off for some people, but then most importantly into the second half of the season, and then for our minor hockey people, like strangely close to playoffs already, and strangely close to end of like 3/4 of the way through season because I think stuff starts in February. Um, and so our topic today, Jamie, is going to talk about like in-season training, what you should be doing if you aren't doing anything, what you might be doing that's maybe a little bit too much, not enough, or what that can differently look like. So, Jamie, lead us off.
Yeah, this is a good question. And there is no clear answer, although there are some things that are definitely better than others. It's important to manage your workload on top of like your just overall workload, whether that's practice and games and in the gym. I spoke to a pro in Sweden yesterday, and her team has not taken a day off in 3 weeks. And that is not what you want. And her body is not feeling great. And so you have to look at that. Like obviously in minor hockey and stuff, and a lot of our listeners are in AAA or in junior, you should get days off, or those are mandatory. And definitely in college, you have to have at least one day off a week. Training itself, I am more of the mind where your training does look very similar to your off season. The difference is the volume and or the intensity is changed, meaning instead of doing 4 sets of 10, you're now maybe doing 2 sets of 8, something where the overall difference less. Maybe the weight is a little less, although I don't mind lifting heavy as long as the volume isn't high. And then sometimes you can either have really high intensity for very few reps, so you can keep some explosive I guess just explosive movements, or you can drop the intensity. So it really depends on where you are, your athlete itself, but your training should look similar. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong. I used to get it wrong when I was younger. where I would basically wouldn't do anything, or I do very little, or I wouldn't know what I was doing. I was basically just throwing darts blindly at the dartboard, and you lose a lot of muscle. You decondition in certain ways that you want to stay conditioned, and you lose strength, and you you don't feel as good because you are losing muscle mass.
Yeah, I think like the one thing I agree with everything you said there. I think the big thing to realize, if there's like one takeaway, is that there are lots of ways of getting stronger and staying strong. Um, and what we know a little bit with some science now about like what we call the minimal effective dose. So like how little work do you need to do to keep getting stronger or to stay as strong? And in season, you should try to keep getting stronger. Like it shouldn't just be, oh yeah, I'm in maintenance now for 5 or 6 months. Like you don't need to do that. Because what we know about getting stronger now is that, like you said, Jamie, like two, 3 sets where you're like, it doesn't even need to be that heavy.
Mhm.
You get stronger doing that if you do it a couple times a week. And that's like that is enough. And we have the data and the science to back that up. But like you said, also is you need to take that, you need to take those workouts and be aware of how they're impacting the rest of your hockey, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to go to the gym after a 2 hour practice on a Monday night, or you're going to the gym for an hour before a 2 hour practice on a Monday night, you have to like really be aware of, okay, how much total work am I doing? How am I going to be able to recover? What does my next few days look like compared to that? And that's where I think, and that's where I do advocate, like if you're not sure how you're reacting to that, is to consult someone. And like I'm happy to plug us as people who,
Mhm.
like, if you're trying to balance your training, or if you think you should be training right now, this is what we're qualified to do.
Yeah, and like I'll speak anecdotally here. So like obviously, like if you follow us, you'll know that I run a remote training and coaching program, and most of the goalies that hop in the program with me either had like their team workouts, or it was basically just glorified dynamic warm-ups, or they weren't doing anything. And as soon as they start to hop on, the strength program, they feel noticeably better. They have more energy. They don't, after that little bit of first of, the initial soreness and DOMs that you get from starting any workout program, the messages that I've received are pretty good. I mean, in season, I'm a big, I like the triphasic system by Cal Dietz. He was the former strength coach of the University of Minnesota hockey team. Um, there's many different ways to skin a cat, obviously, but I like the way that this is structured. And it's funny because if you read the book Triphasic Training, he would train his athletes around their exam schedule. And so when you look at training, it's a stress. Everything you do basically is putting stress on your body, and you need to make sure that you can recover from that stress. That's that minimal effective dose that Ben was talking about. So for him, when were the athletes in college at their highest stress levels? Around exams. So he would peak his training around exams time. It's funny, in the book, he said he wanted his athletes to get colds and be sick around exam times, because then he knew he was peaking, and then they wouldn't do anything for those exam weeks. They recover from their colds, and then they have that super compensation so that the games after they be flying and they feel good. I don't. It's hard for me to monitor that, and I definitely don't know if that's the best approach. Mind you, he's won a couple of national championships, so who am I to say? But for me, it's more about structuring their trainings so that you can make positive gains and you feel good and you feel explosive, and then all that work you're putting in the gym translates to the ice. And that's what I want in season. Well, and off season, but in season specifically.
Yeah, and let's do a little like case study. I think that'll be helpful. I think one of the big things that not us, only us, but lots of people say is like, here's this thing that we should be doing, and then like there's no concrete example for people who are maybe a little bit less familiar with what they should be doing. So let's take the context of, we'll call it like an older minor hockey or junior hockey, or like junior athlete, because those schedules truthfully are like kind of similar. Um, in the grand scheme of things. Let's say you're a team that plays on average 3-4 practices a week, 1 to 2 games a week. So you have anywhere between 4 and 6 ice sessions per week, which I think is, well, that's like
Pretty standard.
college. It's junior.
Yeah.
Like yeah, that sounds about right. Like I'd say on average, probably 5 a week. Some weeks with 6, some weeks with 4. What are you thinking? And then I'll tell you what I would think, which I know you're going to care about a lot. You should care about what I'm going to say. So go ahead.
Uh, so obviously, like I said, I follow triphasic training, so it really depends on what phase they're in. So that's how I structure the workouts. But I'm usually so what I've come to realize is most games are played Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So train lifting in the gym Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are lift days. Now, whether I structure that like lower, upper, lower, upper, lower, upper, or total, total, total is dependent on the athlete. But Monday through Wednesday are lift days. Thursday is in the gym, but it's not a lift. It's either a very light plyo day with very minimal like exercises because plyometrics they don't seem like it but are very taxing on your system. So it might include no more than 20 jumps total, and then like some mobility flow or just like getting general movements so they feel good. And then that their practice volume is usually lower just so that I'm not taxing the body. And then they'll play Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and make sure that they're warming up and cooling down properly. But that's the general approach in season that I take. Now, if they have like a Tuesday game or something, we can tweak around. We'll tweak around that. But I'm not afraid to train athletes in the season, and the athletes that work with me realize that they perform much better when they are lifting in season.
Now, without again, like obviously give as much as you want here, but how long are you structuring those workouts? So like are you changing your workouts for your athletes? If they tell you that they're always practicing for 90 minutes, 50 minutes, 2 hours, are you change like does your workout change based on their hockey or their duration of practice or what they think practice is going to be difficulty wise, things like that?
Yes and no. The structure of the workout typically doesn't change. I mean, if they're on the ice for like 90 minutes to 2 hours, then I will decrease the time in the gym or I will decrease the number of workouts. I probably switch it to 2 total bodies, like either and spaced out like Monday, Wednesday, just so that they can still maintain and get some benefits and improvement without going over that recovery threshold. Um, and then I'm also not afraid. Like the thing is, like my program that I run, we have our group chat constantly. Like I have forums and feedback, and everyone's giving me information how they feel daily. So one of my goalies just came back from a showcase where they played just like a heinous amount of games in 3 days, and he's like, my body's ruined. So I just told him, man, like take 2 to 3 days off. Like you're not lifting for 2 to 3 days. You can follow the mobility stuff that I give you if you want, but that's not mandatory. Like I want you to just go for some walks, recover. I know you don't have any team practices, but get your body feeling good. And then we'll get some lighter workouts in the week, in the early in the week while you have practice so that you can kill it this weekend in the games.
Yeah, so I think that's like the big important distinction is there's lots of times to pull back and push forward. But I think the other component that I think is worth mentioning here is so like I'm in the same camp. I'm not afraid. I go a little bit further. I'm not afraid to program lifts the day before games, the day of games. Like I think all that, like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think one of the big things that people sometimes get their head stuck in, and this is people of all ages. Like I have adult friends who've been lifting for a long time who still feel this way. But like how sore or tired you are after a gym session does not indicate how productive that session was,
Yeah.
right? Like you can get a lot stronger, you can get more explosive without like pushing your body completely to the point of fatigue that you feel tired the next day or feel really tired for the rest of the day. And that's something important to consider too. So in season, if you're like, oh, I can't train on these days because I don't want to be sore the next day, it's like that's a sign to me. It should be a sign to you that your training something is a little bit off of there because you shouldn't be sore. Like and
Yeah.
especially like
Either
you
you're
don't need to
not
chase
so
that.
yeah. So if you're feeling sore after every training, there's a couple of things. It's either you're training too hard in that session, or you're not training enough throughout the week where that new stimulus is causing you to be sore. And you don't want either of those. You want it to manage your volume and intensity that we talked about, but you also need to train so that you are adapting because that is the purpose of being in the gym is to improve strength, improve explosiveness, improve recovery. Um, and that all adds up over the course of the season. And, like I don't typically program lifts day of games for my guys unless they're college guys because they don't have access to gyms as easily as college hockey players do. And even some of them, sometimes their strength facility isn't located in the arena with them. So that's just makes it a lot more difficult. But there are schools, I know Bowling Green University, like they would max out their lifts, like squats, benches, Olympic lifts throughout the season. Like every 2 weeks would max out. Whether that's the right or the wrong way, I don't know. That's what they do. But they were also absolute units and would bully us when we played, and they were a very good team. Now, did that it was because they were maxing out why they were good? No, but it didn't hurt them. It didn't hurt their performance. And so that's the point I'm trying to make is like there are many different approaches as long as you are lifting and you are lifting somewhat heavy, like that is good. You'll find a lot of strength coaches in the goalie world or the hockey world be like, oh, you guys are fragile and you can't do anything.
Yeah.
It's shown that you can do that approach if you want, but it's shown that lifting heavy is probably better in the long run, and the very worst is not going to hurt your performance.
Yeah, and like heavy looks a lot of different ways. So like heavy-ish. That's the important distinction.
Yeah,
Like heavy enough to force you to again create a lot of force when you're moving weights and get stronger. But not so heavy. You don't need to get stapled to the floor twice a week.
true. Oh, that'd be
um,
way cooler if you did.
yeah, and then like one extra side note, and this is something I always found interesting, is that there's like a fear around again, and this kind of ties back into there's a fear around that if you're training and you're lifting, your performance might decrease because you're doing more. I might be a little bit more sore generally. Sometimes that can happen during different peaks of hockey, and like I said, more games at a time. And there's ebbs and flows. But what's really interesting is if you're someone who's a little nervous about being a little sore, maybe worried about like those delayed onset muscle soreness, some DOMs, like you said, maybe you're just only able to get into the gym once or twice a week, and sometimes it gets a little sore the next day. The nice thing is that pretty much all the data that looks at this has shown is that there's like very, very, very minimal effects on performance.
Mhm.
And so like you can, as much as we just said, like, hey, like if you're feeling crushed after your gym sessions, you're probably doing too much. There's also times where like you're gonna have a little bit of like muscle tenderness, which is super normal. And that's like very unlikely to impact your performance. So don't be afraid of like, oh, my legs are a little bit, a little bit
Mhm.
sore from yesterday. Like you're fine. You're gonna be okay. Like when we look at the tests that monitor our performance. So like after people who have DOMs, delayed onset muscle soreness, a little soreness after you work out. Like you look at studies where they did broad jump, counter movement jump, other like rate of force production exercises, and it's pretty similar to how they were after not feeling sore, to the point that like you're okay. Training during the season to get stronger is good, and the little bits of extra soreness or a little bit extra fatigue you might have sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it's largely okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's also yeah. I actually I'm not gonna say that. We'll say that for another episode. I just want to talk because we were talking about plyometrics, and I want to talk about that in another episode. I think that's good for like an off season episode.
Yeah, I don't again like I think it's really that simple, is that like ideally in a perfect world, I would say that if you're over the age of like 12 or 13, I think you can get in the gym twice a week during the season. I think that's a great time to learn. And I also think if you are someone listening, if you're a parent, you're a coach, and you primarily work with athletes of boys and girls between the ages of like 11 and 15, like that is the like most optimal window for muscle stimulus of like any age in the or strength stimulus because of the hormones that are occurring at that age
Mhm.
for boys and girls. So like there's this beautiful pocket of time where you can get so strong. And I know some athletes who I coached during that window who like just got so astronomically strong in such a short period of time during the right window. And so like I think don't miss your window because you're in season for 6 months, right?
If you
Like
miss your
that's
window, you're gonna end up like me at 29 and not as strong as I would like to be.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, again, going back, like, rewind the clock. Like, I started lifting when I was 13. But like, I didn't take it seriously enough because I was a 13-year-old kid who didn't take it seriously. And like, I also kind of missed that window too. So,
Yeah,
even though I'm still strong at Jimmy. So,
that is true.
stronger. But and this is my last story, but I always found this interesting is the first time I cleaned 300 pounds was the day after a 6-hour road trip game that we had. Granted, I did sit on the bench the game.
So
But the
your
next
body
day,
was primed and ready to go.
yeah, I sat on the bus all the way, and then I sat on the bench, and then I sat right back on the bus. And then the next day I cleaned 300 pounds. Um,
You had that like 2 hours of cryotherapy. That's what did it for you. It was
yeah,
obviously the cryo.
I was I was again like, I don't know if you ever were this way, and this is a side story, but like when there's some games where I was backing up, where I was the absolute definition of a space cadet,
Oh,
just
oh,
staring into the world, no idea where I
oh yeah.
was.
Oh my God. I would not pay attention one bit.
Yeah, and that's not great. But anyways,
And
I was
when I was starting, I was a starter and backing up, it was even worse because that was my day off. Like I was taking that off.
yeah, fully off.
Physically, mentally, I was off.
Which is, this is, maybe we'll save this one for another time. But like when you're totally lost in space and time, and then your team lets up 3 goals in 12 seconds and you get thrown in, and you don't have any part of your body can be nervous because your brain isn't functioning. So like you
Yeah.
just go in and you're like, all right, here we go.
Yeah, we
Like
came
I
all this way. You might as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's for another time. But
another story.
anyways, you can train during the season and you should. And
Can.
so if you're
You
not
should.
training during the season and you want to start, and you're listening to this, reach out to myself or Jamie. We're happy to talk about things and if see if you can kind of get involved in what Jamie's doing with his group. If you're a little bit younger, we also offer a bunch of other different things that way too. Um, and then if you live in the greater Toronto area and you're listening to this starting in 2 weeks, come train with me. Um, in person. That's my plug, Jamie.
Okay, do what you need to do. Thanks everyone for listening. Give us a like, comment, rating, subscribe. If you have any questions, comment them down below in this video or reach out to us directly. Um, especially if yeah, I have nothing more to add. Pretty good.
Yeah. Thanks for listening as always.
Thanks.